guys, welcome to the broadcast. Let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. Happy Monday to everyone. The sun is shining, it's a nice day. I can see a bunch of you tuned in right now. We're live across a whole bunch of different platforms today, as we have been recently. That's right, so we're live on Reignite Democracy, my page, the Morgan C. Jonas page, all the other Reignite pages on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube and Twitter right now. Kimberly says you can hear, that's great. There's Gavin, how are we? Ross, Ange, Peter. It's nice to see you guys here. I hope everybody had a nice weekend. I know that I had a nice weekend. It was a great weekend. I think we had a successful event at Greg Hunt's office. That's right. We went and we made our voices heard. And what I'm seeing very much from the people of Victoria is a willingness to get involved and to be part of this great movement. So first and foremost, I'd really like to congratulate everybody that came down on Saturday and everyone that was supporting the initiative from home. We're only going to be able to affect change in our country if regular, decent people start getting involved in the political arena. There's lots of different ways that you can be involved, of course, and if you do want to be involved, just head over to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au, and on the homepage, there's a little form you can fill out to express how you'd like to participate. It could be something basic from handing out information at events. It could be doing letterbox drops, or maybe you know deep inside of you that you have what it takes to take one of these seats from one of the current politicians who are currently working within the walls of our parliaments. Because the truth is, these people have had it far too good for far too long. They're very lazy. Many of these career politicians have been in there for countless amounts of years and have never been challenged. Well, that's all changing, and this is the very basis for the We Are Coming movement. So really great. I'm so happy to see you guys. Thank you, Mers. That's a very kind thing for you to say. We, the Australian people, I dare say our fighting spirit is back. Do you guys agree with that? I don't think I'm imagining it. I think this is just a matter of simple observation. So just making sure you guys can hear me loud and clear. Barry says turn the sound up. I think the sound should be working okay, so it could maybe be your phone there that needs to be turned up. Nikki says we need to have a say in Parliament. You're right, we do. It's long overdue, and it's about time that we did. Anyway, I'm going to get to it here. Here is some good news, guys. You know, a lot of the time we speak about bad news, and sometimes it seems like it's all doom and gloom. So this was actually posted by the Hawthorn RSL sub-branch. I'm going to read to you. It says here, RSL said in a statement after hearing public sentiment and feedback, RSL Victoria has renewed its commitment to holding an Anzac Day march in Melbourne that will be as close to normal as possible. It says here, quote, RSL Victoria is working with the Department of Health and Human Services and other government representatives to ensure that all Victorians can commemorate this year's Anzac Day in a, quote, COVID-safe way, it said. Okay, so at least the RSL is doing the right thing. Of course, they were very out of touch, and a lot of people were very upset the RSL would cancel the march so far in advance. I mean, we're talking about at the end of April, and RSL really jumped the gun. Perhaps it was due to pressure and coercion from the government. I suppose we'll never know. But it looks like the proceedings are back on. So we were going to host an event for our veterans on Anzac Day, but I suppose RSL is coming through and doing that. So maybe we could do something later on. Maybe we could do something like a fundraiser in the park, maybe a sausage sizzle, something to that effect. If you have any ideas, put that in the comments below. So I just wanted to say that. Second of all, this is just a public service announcement. I know that some of you have seen this. Now, there's certain people out there that are trying to impersonate me online. They're using my name, they're using my profile pictures, and they're trying to scam you out of money. So I just wanted to let all of you know, be on the lookout. This is not something new. This sort of thing just seems to be popping up more and more. So yeah, if you see pages like this, you know, do me a favor, report it, but most of all, don't buy into this sort of rubbish. All right, I wanted to just show you this photo. I only came across this photo the other day, and this was from the other week in the park. A very inspiring photo, as you can see, a young lady there showing that she's not scared and that she's willing to stand up for what's right and willing to stand up for our country. And very, very inspiring. So I just wanted to put this on the screen for a minute here. I don't know who this person is, but whoever you are, you're very brave and you're inspiring people, so thank you. All right, so of course we had a great event and we had some good coverage from the mainstream media and we had some coverage that was not so good, some dishonest coverage. I'm going to play to you a little clip right here from Channel 7, Paul Dowsley, who I think he did a pretty fair job. Anyway, I'll let you decide. I'm going to play that now.
Good evening. Anti-vax protesters have targeted the Mornington Peninsula office of Health Minister Greg Hunt as Australia's vaccine rollout is plagued by new problems. It's been revealed the doctor at the centre of the overdose scandal was previously sanctioned after complaints over his practice.
At a Somerville shopping centre, the Federal Health Minister's office was flanked.
And Australia is worth fighting for!
By vaccination protesters and police.
He only cares about advancing his career and advancing the corporate interests of the pharmaceutical corporations.
It's not a vaccine, it's poison.
Getting the COVID jab in Australia isn't compulsory, but the protesters believe everyone will be pressured to have the jab.
In which ways will Australian citizens be punished if they choose not to take the vaccine? What private and public services will they be restricted from accessing? Will they be able to travel? Will they be able to visit their loved ones in nursing homes? Will they be able to access educational services?
We must not allow this to happen.
Unlike the vaccination protest a week ago in South Yarra, which saw 20 arrests and police pepper spray demonstrators, today's remained calm, instead focusing on doubt and distrust.
For myself, I see there's more risk taking the vaccine than there is getting COVID.
The target of the protesters' message wasn't at his office. Greg Hunt's staff told 7 News he is in the electorate, but spending the day with his family.
I would say that Greg Hunt has breached his duty of care to the Australian people.
More than 3,500 Victorians have now received their...
Yeah, and it basically goes on like that. So I think Paul did a fair job. I had a chat to him on the day and... You know, I struggle to trust any mainstream media, of course, but Paul looked me in the eye on the day and said that he's not there to make us look silly or anything like that, and he held good on his word. So hopefully he continues to give us fair coverage. I consider that to be fair coverage, but you know what? Why don't you go ahead and put that in the comments? Do you think that was fair? To me, that seemed actually pretty fair. So I'm just going to keep this rolling here. I see some of you making comments about Pauline and that Pauline had something to say in regards to the RSL ban on Anzac Day. Pauline's been outspoken on a lot of issues for a very long time, and I think she's been treated very unfairly. Since some of you have mentioned Pauline, I've actually got a clip right here from late last year, and this is in regards to China. So you know what? I'll go and play it for you now. It's only about a minute and a half.
I've really had no time for China. I see it as a country that's building up their power around the world, ingratiating themselves into these countries by pouring money into it and then being able to manipulate those poor countries in the way they strategically setting themselves up. We have done free trade agreements and deals with them that have concerned me for years. We've allowed them to buy up interest in our country, the ownership of our water, the ownership of our land, agricultural land, industries, businesses. They have structured themselves in this country that really concerns me and most Australians that I talk to. They are a growing power, a power that if they ever were to strike out, we would have no chance whatsoever of defending ourselves against this nation. And they have to, because they're a growing population, whereas they're outgrowing their own area and need to expand for the food source they require for their own people. They have dominated the world with their product that they have produced. And we've destroyed our own industries and manufacturing and buying their rubbish and bringing it into this country, loss of jobs, and the governments, this LNP, this Liberal National Party government, plus Labor, they have both to blame for this. They've allowed us down this track. We've lost all these jobs in this country. We now don't have the products and we rely on imports from overseas, and most of it comes from either India or China. We have to wake up to ourselves and start getting back jobs and industries manufacturing into this country.
So there you go. That was pretty handy. I had a clip there to play for you guys, and we'll be speaking about the issues in more detail on other shows that were just raised there by Pauline, and as I mentioned, that was taken from late last year. But I see some comments here, and Somebody said at least Paul didn't refer to us as anti-vaxxers, and that's true. This is not an anti-vaccine movement. We simply believe that citizens should not be coerced into taking a drug that they didn't ask for and that they don't want, whether it's a vaccine or anything else. And we oppose people being punished for refusing to take this vaccine. In other words, we truly believe that nobody should be restricted from accessing public and private services should they choose not to take the COVID-19 vaccine, whether it's travel, whether it's accessing health services, whether it's education for your kids, whether it's entering a sports stadium or attending a concert. We don't believe anybody should be discriminated against in any of these areas should they choose not to take the COVID-19 vaccine. All right, that is not an anti-vaccination position. It's something else. It's very specific. It's anti-discrimination. Myself, I've taken several vaccines voluntarily in my life, and as far as I'm concerned, they served me quite well. So this is all about opposing coercion and upholding what is our God-given right, which is having governance over our own bodies to decide what we put in, and opposing the government making that decision for us. And I think that's just fair enough, and I think that's a matter of upholding human dignity and human rights. But of course, not everyone in the mainstream media sees it that way, and they're actually doing everything they can to slander us, to try and scare us, to stop us from speaking out. And I'm going to have a bit of a chat to you about that. So I've got an article here from the Herald Sun. So on Saturday, there was a Herald Sun journalist kind of, walking around, trying to talk to people, a pretty meek-looking individual, I suppose I'd describe him as. So I'm going to read to you the article from the Herald Sun. It says here, police target anti-vax protesters over COVID jab rollout fears. It says, police fear anti-vaxxers plan to target vaccination centres and plan to crack down on militant members of the movement. So who are these militant members? I'm not sure. I haven't met anybody that comes across as militant in nature. Who's planning to, quote, target vaccination centres? I have no idea. This is news to me. It says here, quote, police are drawing up a hit list. Is that not designed for intimidation? A hit list? Am I on a hit list? Is Monica on a hit list? Of, quote, anti-vaccination protesters amid fears that vaccination hubs and storage facilities could be targeted. It says here, senior figures in government and law enforcement hold serious concerns that, quote, militant protesters could disrupt the rollout of the vaccine. Disrupt the rollout of the vaccine. Okay. Freedom of speech, expressing that people should have the right to choose what goes into their body. Is this what they're referring to? And how did they draw this conclusion, unless there's something I don't know about? Have you heard of a group out there that is advocating for some type of on-the-ground militant action to be taken against vaccination centres or storage facilities? Have you heard about the existence of such a group? I haven't. That's news to me. If you have, put that in the comments. It says here, with protesters out in force on Saturday, the Herald Sun can reveal that a specialist team of detectives have been set up by the Australian Federal Police to crack down on anti-vaxxers. Okay. It says here, investigators from Task Force Lotus are on standby to be deployed in the event of a major security breach involving the vaccine. Okay, it's a little bit vague. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Here's a picture here from the protest. It was a great day. It says here, a 24/7 team, the Joint Intelligence Group, has also been established by the Department of Home Affairs to centralise all information regarding the anti-vaccination movement and vaccine security. The group is made up of agencies, including the Australian Federal Police, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, Australian Border Force, and state police forces. Okay, so it sounds like pretty serious stuff. It says here, it can also be revealed that specific information about where vaccines are stored in hubs is being kept secret over security concerns. The Herald Sun has been told that authorities are particularly concerned about an attack on a vaccine storage facility by the anti-vaccination movement. Concerned about an attack. That implies to me past tense, that supposedly an attack took place. Do you know anything about this? I haven't seen anything in the media. Maybe for some reason it slipped past me. If you have the link, please send it to me. It says here, another concern for police is fraud activity related to vaccine certificates. Okay. All right, so there's a photo from the day. Quote, everybody's concerned about this. We don't want them. Who is them? I don't know who them is. Them, whoever they're referring to, destroying vials of vaccine, law enforcement source said. In a submission to the federal inquiry into, quote, extremist movements and radicalism in Australia last week, the AFP warned of the increasing risk of violence from the anti-vaccination movement. Well, increased risk of violence. I'm concerned about an increased risk of violence from Victoria Police. They're very quick to pull out their pepper spray. They're very quick to kettle. They're very quick to use excessive force. I've been subjected to that excessive force myself last year. I can tell you that it's not very pleasant. It says here, quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated a range of anti-government, anti-vaccination and pro-conspiracy narratives, raising public awareness of different issue-motivated groups. There should be a hyphen there. It says, quote, the AFP will become involved where such groups support or seek to use violence. I don't know about anybody planning to use violence. Anti-government. Well, when the government's extending the state of emergency and we see countless amounts of businesses destroyed, countless amounts of livelihoods destroyed, people are unable to bid their final farewells to their loved ones, maybe some people out there will develop negative sentiments towards the government. No job, nobody wants to be on JobKeeper. I mean, obviously some people do, but the vast majority of us would prefer to retain our dignity, work in our own jobs and our businesses. It says here, anti-vaxxers descended on Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt's office. Okay, so we're all, quote, anti-vaxxers. So supposedly the Herald Sun has accessed the inner workings of all of our brains and determined beyond reasonable doubt that we're all, quote, anti-vaxxers. So this is an unfounded claim. It's a bold-faced lie, okay? Descended on Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt's office on the Morning Peninsula on Saturday to rally against the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. Heavy police presence greeted, that's one way to put it, about 200 people who gathered in Somerville to claim the vaccine was not safe and, quote, freedom of choice has been taken away. They also chanted, we are coming. Well, that's true, we are coming. All right, so here's what they've referred to us as, myth makers. So everybody knows who this is. There's Monica right there. And they've taken some quotes from Monica, which I think were great quotes and great things to say. We are not going to be aggressive towards the police. It just makes us look bad. We have truth on our side. Those are the words of Monica. Pretty good words, right? It's been absolutely fantastic. I couldn't have wished for a better day, actually. I'm really proud of everyone that came. It was totally peaceful. I echo those sentiments. Monica also addressed the Chief Commissioner, Shane Patton. She said, Shane Patton actually has the opportunity to say no to Daniel Andrews. He can say no. He can say no. For example, these are unlawful directions. I'm not going to follow it. Maybe the time is coming. With all the influence together, we've got over 1 million voters. And yeah, so great words by Monica there. So it's kind of interesting, right? They call Monica a, quote, myth maker. And then they quote Monica's words, which are actually really good and really positive. So there you go. There's Matt Lawson there. Of course, he got a mention, referred to him as a, quote, vaccine conspiracy theorist. Shared a speech from a protest on Friday to his Facebook page. Says here, this is what they wrote in regards to Matt. Despite telling the gathering he would, quote, talking straight facts, no conspiracies, they said Mr. Lawson again launched into a number of baseless conspiracy theories, such as suggesting high school students can receive the COVID-19 vaccine without their parents' consent. That's not a conspiracy theory. So, okay, so here's the problem we've got here, okay? This is from health.vic.gov.au, which clearly details consent without a parent or guardian for people under the age of 18. So is Matt Lawson and health.vic.gov.au, are they both conspiracy theorists or are they not? So I'm not sure if these people from the Herald Sun have really done their reading, but the wording is really clear right here on health.vic.gov.au, and I'm going to read that to you in a second because they said the same thing about me. So there you go, there I am, Morgan C. Jonas. I've been referred to as a, quote, conspiracy theorist because, of course, conspiracy theorist is nothing more than a term used by the government and the mainstream media to silence anybody who is speaking out. We saw the same type of language used in that hallway confrontation between Tanya Plibersek and Craig Kelly, and I agree with Monica, Craig Kelly should be the Prime Minister of Australia. Of course, Plibersek referring to Craig Kelly as a conspiracy theorist, supposedly because he shared a range of different research papers on his Facebook. and supposedly sharing research papers makes you a, quote, conspiracy theorist. So here we go. Conspiracy theorist Morgan C. Jonas, who boasts a Facebook following of more than 18,000 people and regularly hosts a 50-minute anti-vaccination social media show. I wonder if they've actually seen my show. Those of you who've watched the show, you know we talk about a whole range of issues. We talk about economics, we talk about sovereignty, we talk about the global agenda of the Chinese Communist Party. Of course, we report on adverse vaccine events from all around the world. We report on data from the CDC. But according to the Herald Sun, it's a 50-minute anti-vaccination social media show. Right. It says, in a video shared to his followers on Friday, Mr. Jonas labelled Premier Daniel Andrews as the, quote, real virus, which he is, and described the COVID-19 pandemic as the, quote, greatest global scandal that we've witnessed in our entire life. I said that. I stand by it. Here you go. It's almost as if Daniel Andrews is playing his cards simply so he can extend his power grab. Because if you ask me, this man has totalitarianism in his eyes, which he does. He takes after his leaders at the Chinese Communist Party. If Daniel Andrews truly believed we were in a crisis situation right now, don't you think he would have treated hotel quarantine a little bit more seriously? Which is true. And it also said that I claimed the federal government was removing the rights of parents to decide whether their children can take the vaccine. This is not what I'm saying. This is what health.vic.gov.au is saying. Okay, so you see what the media is doing here. They're taking something that I reported on, that Matt reported on, and making it out that we're the ones that came up with these statements. So I'm going to read it to you right here from health.vic.gov.au, and this is in regards to the COVID-19 vaccine. It says here, consent without a parent/guardian. The law recognises that as children become older and more mature, they are more capable of making their own decisions about a wide range of issues, including decisions about their healthcare and well-being. The law recognises that a young person may reach this stage before they are 18 years old. These young people are referred to as, quote, mature minors. There is no specific age when a young person may be deemed a mature minor. Determining whether a young person is a mature minor requires consideration of whether they have sufficient maturity to understand the nature and effect of a decision to be vaccinated. All right, to be vaccinated. But supposedly, we're all conspiracy theorists for reporting on the words from health.vic.gov.au. Herald Sun, what an absolute joke. Anyway, moving forward here, this is also in relation to Saturday. This is from The Guardian, Australian, quote, myth-busting unit established to take on COVID misinformation. It says here, the federal government has established a myth-busting unit. All sounds very serious, doesn't it? To address what Health Minister Greg Hunt has called plainly ridiculous. Plainly ridiculous. And what? It was not plainly ridiculous when Greg Hunt brought in 10 million PCR tests from BGI Group, a Chinese corporation that has undeniable ties to the world's most heinous crimes against humanity. Was that not plainly ridiculous, Greg Hunt? And that we've seen the provisional approval of vaccines, some with technology that's never been used before? Is it not plainly ridiculous that Greg Hunt essentially looks into the eyes of every single Australian and demands that we trust him? This man has no right to call anyone ridiculous, especially the people that pay his wages. Is that fair enough? Greg Hunt has a very comfortable job. He's had it really good for a really long time. And now the people of Australia have said we've had enough, and this man doesn't deserve to represent us. Misinformation surrounding the rollout, I'm just going to keep reading, rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in Australia amid increasing concerns about the spread of false information and conspiracy theories during the pandemic. It says here, some of these anti-vaxxers, this is what we all are, right? If you oppose Greg Hunt, if you call for a balanced debate, if you question the merit of the provisional approval with the Therapeutic Goods Administration, you're just an anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist. He said that anti-vaxxers are peddling, frankly, false and clearly irresponsible views. Greg Hunt, I challenge you. Which of my views are irresponsible? How about you answer that? Whether it's about 5G and Bill Gates and mind control. Okay, so he takes, these three topics here, 5G, Bill Gates, mind control, and tries to imply that that's what we're about. Whereas, no, Greg Hunt, what we're simply saying is that the government does not have the right to dictate what drugs Australians put into their body, and the government does not have the right to punish people should they choose not to take those drugs. It's really simple, Greg Hunt, Health Minister. It says here, quote, we don't want to give too much air to some of the silliest ideas, but we do want to provide public reassurance we're combating misinformation on those ideas. How about we debate? How about we debate ideas, Greg Hunt? It says here on Saturday, the New York Times reported that roughly 1/3 of US troops on active duty in the National Guard have declined to take the vaccine. All right? So is 1/3 of the National Guard, are they all conspiracy theorists? Are they all anti-vaxxers that are spreading disinformation? Says here, in Australia, research released by the government earlier this month found only 64% of people said they'll definitely get the vaccine, although authorities remain confident that figure would rise significantly as the rollout progressed. Why are they so confident that figure will rise? Because the government has a very tactful propaganda campaign in store for the Australian people. That's right. So therefore, it's the job of we the people to provide the other side of the story and to remind everybody in Australia that it's our body, it's our right. This is not the decision of the government, it's our decision. All right, moving on. This is also in relation. I'm going to play this little clip to you here from 9 News. Fears vaccine hubs could be, quote, targeted as online chatter spikes. Okay, listen to this.
As the rollout of the COVID jab enters its second week here, there are concerns vaccine hubs and storage facilities could be targeted by anti-vaxxers. Let's go to our Melbourne reporter, Melanie Slade. Mel, why are authorities worried?
Good morning, Sophie. Well, it does seem that the anti-vaccination movement here in Australia is growing. The federal government has appointed a special project team and they're keeping a very close eye on chatter that's going on online. And it seems that that chatter is skyrocketing. They're monitoring comments and interactions. Anybody who seems to be against the COVID-19 vaccination. Previously, those interactions were about 200 a day. They've now jumped to 6,000 comments and interactions every day. That has...
Yeah, because people are concerned. So this is supposedly a crime now. Did you hear her words? Anybody expressing opposition to the vaccine is being monitored by these special investigators. So the government is making its way into your life, whether you like it or not. So have a conversation online. Hey, I'm a bit concerned about this vaccine. I'm concerned that I might be fired from my job if I don't want to take it. Hey, we're going to start investigating you. That's dangerous. All right, I'm going to keep playing this.
It's got authorities on edge, but they are keeping a very close eye on things. Last weekend in Melbourne, we had a protest. Yesterday, there was a peaceful protest outside Greg Hunt's office.
It was peaceful.
Some of those protesters claim that the vaccination actually alters people's DNA.
Nobody said that. Nobody that spoke made that claim, by the way. People can have signs in the crowd. There's free speech, free expression. You can make whatever sign you want. You can bring it to a protest. You can hold it in the street. Doesn't matter. Nobody speaking claimed that there's going to be DNA altering involved. Just to make that perfectly clear, 9 News.
Let's now hear from one of those protesters.
Border closures and mandatory masks. And now all this talk about a mandatory vaccine.
He only cares about advancing his career and advancing the corporate interests of the pharmaceutical corporations.
Just about basically informed consent.
There was some suggestion that the federal government would make the vaccination mandatory for all Australians. However, that could only be the case if people want to travel overseas. Yesterday here in...
Only overseas? We have talk about COVID passports. We know the government is investing in the Australian Immunisation Register. We hear about certain jobs, certain sectors that are very likely to mandate COVID-19 vaccines for their employees. We hear about certain companies, certain ticket companies that will only allow people to enter their events. So this is a very disingenuous report. Only for overseas travel? What about jobs? What about visiting our loved ones in aged care facilities? Can this reporter from Channel 9 assure us that we won't be restricted from visiting our elderly and loved ones in nursing homes should we decline to take this COVID vaccine? I mean, this is the standard of journalism in Australia. It's an absolute joke. That's why I started the MCJ Report, because I realised the quality of journalism and news is so incredibly substandard that we need alternatives. Is that fair enough? And that's why I'm doing this show. Anyway, I'm going to move on here. All right, so as you know, the vote for the state of emergency is going to take place tomorrow night. We're going to go down to Parliament at 6 p.m. So you're welcome to come down. I'm going to be down there. Now, what this really comes down to, of course, is the same issue we faced last time here in Victoria, which are the 3 crossbenchers in question. The 3 crossbenchers who have proven that they're willing to do deals in exchange for selling out the people, in exchange for allowing the extension of the power grab by the most out-of-control premier in Australian history, and that, of course, is Daniel Andrews. We're talking about Ratnam, we're talking about Andy Medic, and we're talking about Fiona Patten. All right, so, what we have here, this is in regards to Ratnam. COVID fines for teens may be waived under state of emergency deal. The government could be forced to waive hefty fines issued to teens who broke coronavirus restrictions under a raft of demands the Greens have issued to secure their support for an extension to Victoria's state of emergency powers. Well, that's pretty easy. Is that what the deal is? Scrap the fines for the teenagers and we're happy to lock Victorians down again for however long Daniel Andrews wants to lock them down for. All right, so that's Fiona Ratnam. Andy Medic. So I don't know if this is in relation to a deal for him to support the extension of the state of emergency, but this is recent. Animal Justice Party calls for family violence law reform to help victims and their pets. All right, so this has all, of course, come around the time of the state of emergency vote. Proposed laws to be put to Victorian Parliament this week. The Victorian Parliament will be one of the first in the country to consider whether animals should be recognised as victims of family violence when Animal Justice Party leader Andy Medic puts forward the motion this week. Says, quote, recognising animal abuse as a form of family violence moves it into the area of law to be able to make changes that are essential and life-saving, Mr. Medic said. Abusers often use pets to manipulate and control their victims, but very few women's refuges allow animals. The motion includes changes to pet ownership laws and a commitment from the state government to provide more support for places for women, their children and their pets. So was this a deal that's been reached for Andy Medic to agree to the state of emergency? You know, these crossbenchers have tremendous negotiating power. And yeah, I mean, for the record, I think we all agree that cruelty towards animals is abhorrent and disgusting, and we should have legal mechanisms in place to protect animals. I think most reasonable people would agree with that. But what it appears to me, this is my speculation, is that Andy Medic is using the state of emergency as a bargaining chip to get the policy that he believes in first and foremost. Of course, we agree animals should be protected, etc., but not at the expense of the livelihoods of Victorians, 6 million Victorians. Okay, so there's Andy Medic right there. Fiona Patten did exactly the same thing this time round as she did last time round regarding the vote for the extension of the state of emergency. She came out, she says, I'm against the extension. I'm against Daniel Andrews holding this absolute power over Victorians. And she took a really hard stand. And then, of course, she reached some kind of deal and she sold out. So she's done the same thing again. She came out initially and indicated that she wouldn't be supporting this the bill in its current form, knowing that she holds such tremendous power sitting in the crossbench, which is why we are coming for all of these people's jobs. They have to go. And just like last time, I have no doubt that she's done a deal and she's going to sell us out. So it looks like the three crossbenchers have betrayed the people of Victoria again. But don't allow this to lead you to letting anyone else off the hook. Of course, Labor votes in unison with Daniel Andrews. We need a major shuffling of the seats. These people have an extraordinary amount of control over the lives of millions of Victorians, these three people. Fiona Patten, I think we need to pay her office a visit. What do you guys think? Would you attend a demonstration at Fiona Patten's office? Put that in the comments. Okay, because I have no faith in this woman based on the betrayal of last time for her to actually vote in favour of the rights of the Victorian people. All right, so here we go right here. The COVID Medical Network, the brave doctors who have been speaking out this entire time since the inception of this scandal. COVID Medical Network doctors group under TGA review after endorsing hydroxychloroquine. This was from just under a week ago. So, of course, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is essentially controlled by the Department of Health, Greg Hunt is the Minister for the Department of Health. They're very specific regarding what type of information and material can be printed online regarding certain drugs. They have very strict guidelines on the marketing of therapeutic goods, and the fines can be really hefty through the TGA if an organisation is found to be promoting certain therapeutic properties of a drug that has not been properly scheduled or approved with the TGA. They could potentially come after that entity very, very hard. So it looks like they're coming after these brave doctors. I'm going to read to you here. It says the National Health Watchdog. National Health Watchdog. Yet they provisionally approve Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine and the PCR test from BGI Group, and they're our watchdog, but don't worry, they're watching over you. Everything the TGA does, it's for your safety, it's for your well-being, nothing else. Is investigating a group of Melbourne doctors after unapproved COVID-19 treatments were endorsed on their website. The COVID Medical Network, which rose to prominence last year after hundreds of doctors signed its open letter criticising Melbourne's second lockdown, which was completely ignored by Daniel Andrews, has advocated for hydroxychloroquine to be used to treat the virus. The Therapeutic Goods Administration has banned Australian doctors from prescribing the drug to combat COVID-19, and the National COVID-19 Clinical Evidence Task Force has previously said hydroxychloroquine does not reduce mortality or improve recovery times for COVID-19. The regulator has strict regulations around false and misleading advertising. So, are any of the claims that the Prime Minister Greg Hunt making about the COVID-19, could any of those claims be considered false and misleading? That's my question to the Therapeutic Goods Administration. With its website stating civil offence breaches can draw fines of up to 1.1 million for individuals and 11.1 million for companies. So there you go. So the TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, cracking down on the COVID Medical Network for doctors speaking out against the prospects of alternative COVID remedies. As you may have seen in New Zealand, they've entered a 7-day lockdown after a, quote, mystery coronavirus case recorded. I think we know that Jacinda Ardern, she's quite similar to Daniel Andrews. She doesn't hesitate to impose a hard lockdown. Just like Daniel Andrews, she cozied up to the Chinese Communist Party and she signed New Zealand onto the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese Communist Party, in my opinion, is looking to use New Zealand as a springboard into Australia. New Zealand is not that valuable to the Chinese Communist Party. It's a small country. The Chinese Communist Party is far more interested in Australia for 2 reasons. We have the land and we have the resources. Okay, so anyway, Jacinda Ardern has locked a lot of people down. She's locked Auckland down. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says Auckland will go into a 7-day lockdown from early morning on Sunday after implying one new local case of coronavirus of an unknown origin emerged. Have they proved beyond reasonable doubt this was not a false positive? My question. This comes 2 weeks after Auckland's nearly 2 million residents were plunged into a snap 3-day lockdown when a family of 3 were diagnosed with more transmissible UK variant. We get it. All right, so we get one positive PCR test. City shuts down for 7 days. This is madness, ladies and gentlemen, and it has to end. Who in New Zealand is standing up against this? I have not seen a great deal of noise coming from the residents of New Zealand. Maybe you have. If you have, can you put me in touch with them? I'd like to speak to these people, if they exist. All right. So here we go. Moving overseas now, a little bit of different news. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, maybe he's the current president. Some people think he's the current president, but former president says he may run for White House again. He made a speech, I believe it was about an hour at CPAC, and he expressed his commitment to supporting certain Republican candidates to make their way into government, into Congress. He also dispelled rumors that he would be starting his own political party. He made it very clear he would not be starting his own political party, and he hinted that he himself may take another run at presidency. Of course, we know the last impeachment trial in the United States didn't get anywhere, so basically it looks like he could very well take another run at presidency. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think he'll take another run, or do you think he'll simply support people from the sidelines? Put that in the comments. Just to remind you guys, you can always head over to the CDC website, that's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention from the United States, to stay up to date with all the adverse reactions recorded from people who have consumed the COVID-19 vaccines. This is a great database, and I wish we had something similar in Australia so we could stay on top of it. I'll keep reporting on latest updates from the CDC. Supposedly, if you read data and you talk about data from the CDC, it makes you a conspiracy theorist, according to certain people in the mainstream media. I just wanted to remind you of this. I did refer to the Prime Minister as a bald-faced liar, and that's because for the better part of 12 months, he has espoused rhetoric to manipulate Australians and to deceive Australians into believing that we would not be coerced into taking the vaccine. In the words of Scott Morrison, he once said, "We're not going to hold you down and make you take it," as if trying to make light of anybody who was concerned about the prospect of mandated vaccines. Now, of course, we see the rollout of the COVID passport. That's happening. We hear talk about having access restricted to public and private services, such as travel, domestic travel, overseas travel, healthcare, education services for kids, entering concerts and other social activities. So Scott Morrison misled the Australian people. And I want to make that perfectly clear that he did so in a very deceptive manner, and it's unacceptable, and it's not what we need from the Prime Minister. We need people to be straight with us. If the intention from the start was to implement these coercive measures for compelling Australians to take the vaccine, Scott Morrison should have manned up, looked us in the face and said, this is what I'm doing. He didn't do that though. He misled you. He acted in a deceptive way, and he needs to be called out for it. This was an article here published from news.com.au outlining certain issues regarding China's global ambitions in relation to Australia. I'm going to play to you a clip right here, which is from the Global Times in China. Now, the Global Times sounds like a newspaper, but it's actually a mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party. So the role of Global Times is to promote a Chinese industrialism and expansion across the world, and to paint the Chinese Communist Party out as some type of humane force that's out to do good in the world, even though the evidence speaks for itself, and that is that, of course, the Chinese Communist Party, since its inception, has been and continues to be guilty of many of the world's most heinous crimes against humanity within their own country. Outside of their own country, we see this is an expansionist regime that not just seeks to expand their commercial influence and to expand their industrialism to other countries, also seeks to expand their ideology and their culture as well. So I'm going to play you this little propaganda piece from the Global Times.
The conflict between Australia and China continues to escalate. Pauline Hanson, Queensland Senator and the leader of Australia's far-right One Nation Party, called for a boycott of Christmas products made in China. To date, there has not been a single China celebrity, let alone politicians, called for a boycott of Australian products.
Okay, so that right there is a bold-faced lie. Of course, we've seen, especially last year, China attacked many of our industries: barley, beef, dairy, tourism. They slandered the spirit of our country. They labelled us racist and said Australia was a dangerous place to go to on a holiday. So the list of attacks has been non-stop. Our coal ships have been held off the coast of China and Chinese waters for months on end. So this is very deceptive language here. It says no one's called for a boycott. We didn't have to call for one. We just did it, okay? Because there's no there's no debate when it comes to any discussions that take place in the Chinese Communist Party. Decisions are made unilaterally, okay? So decisions are made from the top down and enforced. And many of those decisions last year included launching what can only be described as a brutal assault on our economy, particularly after Scott Morrison called for an investigation into the origins of coronavirus. But this really started ramping up when we declined Huawei's bid to build the 5G network in Australia. The Chinese Communist Party took it personally and have been punishing our industries ever since, which, just to put it in perspective, this is the fault of many successions of governments that have, of course, made our economy so codependent on China that we're now in a position where China can make very small adjustments to their foreign policy in terms of how they trade with Australia. Small adjustment for China, no skin off their nose, yet with disastrous results for our industries. And this is another reason why we need new people working within the walls of our parliaments anyway.
China's imposed tariffs on Australian products are anti-dumping and anti-subsidy actions that are in accordance with international trade rules. Australia can file a suit against China with the WTO. If China loses, we will accept the ruling. The thing is, Australia cannot win. Australia has launched way more anti-dumping investigations against Chinese products.
Okay, so anti-dumping, what they're talking about there is, basically sending and offloading huge amounts of sort of undervalued goods in another country that undermines the local industry. Now, China accused us of anti-dumping with our wine and used that as an excuse for halting Australian wine exports. Now, this was an unfounded claim and something that's only been brought about recently. The truth is, Australian wine is actually quite expensive in China, and this is just an example. So there's really no way, given the average price point of Australian wine in China, that any amount of Australian wine to enter the Chinese market could undermine the average prices of other products. Whereas you look at China, we look at anti-dumping over here. To what degree has our country been flooded with cheap Chinese goods, many of them knockoffs, many stolen intellectual property, if not absolutely everything? So there are so many backdoors into Australia. I did a whole presentation on how Chinese corporations are able to dump products in Australia whilst avoiding paying GST, whilst receiving extraordinary discounts on customs duties, receiving postal discounts, postal subsidies through the United Nations, that's right, through the Universal Postal Union, which you, the Australian consumer, pays for. And yet we're the ones guilty of dumping. You know, this is such a typical abusive relationship where you've got one party accusing the other party of what they themselves are guilty of. We don't have the manufacturing power to dump anything in China. They have the manufacturing capacity to completely undermine any industry that they want through dumping, and largely the Australian government has allowed them to get away with it. That's why we're coming for these people's jobs. We can't go on like this.
Than China has against Australian products. In my opinion, Australia has a very extreme ideology.
We've got an extreme ideology. They're putting millions of Muslims in concentration camps in the far west region of East Turkestan. They launched a sexual assault campaign on Tibetan nuns. We're the ones with an extreme ideology. I mean, this is extraordinary to hear, ladies and gentlemen. In China, you can't speak out against the government. If you do, you'll be locked up somewhere. And maybe we're heading that way, by the way, but we're not quite there yet. We're the ones that are extreme according to the Chinese Communist Party.
And Canberra thinks that they are always right and Beijing is always wrong. I really didn't get it. Where does their moral superiority come from? Some people in Australia clamoring to boycott Chinese products don't scare Chinese at all. For starters, the Australian market is a small one to China.
That's right, the Australian market is small. We've got 25 million people, they've got 1.5 billion people. That's why they can crush our industries in a heartbeat. That's why it's been, you should understand without any doubt that our economy's been undermined, our politicians have been lazy. Instead of investing in diversifying our export markets, instead of investing in advanced manufacturing, diversifying our industry and investing in Australian innovation, the Australian government decided they'd prefer to privatise one asset after another. Privatise that piece of land, privatise a port, privatise an airstrip, sell it to China, because why? It was an easy approach to bringing money into our economy, but at the expense of parting with our sovereignty and our capability to remain independent. And of course, moving all of our manufacturing to China, they call the shots. At least 1/3 of our exports go to China, which gives them extraordinary power to shut down any industry they want. So he's right. China has more of a capability to hurt Australia than Australia does to China. Apart from, I argue, with iron ore. A huge amount of iron ore used for China's steel production comes from Australia. They can't replace us. They cannot find another iron ore producer to provide them with the pure amount of steel, iron ore steel, that we provide them with. So keep that in mind. For all the talk from China, they haven't attacked our iron ore industry, and that's because they need it. So keep in mind, when China expands and they're building military islands in the South China Sea, they're doing so with Australian steel. When they expand their military, they build new weapons, they're doing so with Australian steel. No one wants to talk about it, but it's a conversation that must be had. Anyway, I don't want to listen to this guy anymore. I'm done with him. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the show, guys. I want to thank everyone for watching. You can head on over to mcjreport.com, sign up to my free newsletter, and make sure that you always stay in touch regarding events, news, information, updates on the We Are Coming movement, but also make sure you go to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au. And if you're interested in joining the fight, right here on the homepage, you see We Are Coming. You can pop your details in, you can register, and you can be part of the solution. Also, make sure you join us on Telegram. That's at Morgan C. Jonas, and Reignite Democracy Australia at Reignite Democracy Australia. So that's it for the show for today. I'm going to break this down into smaller sections. I will upload it. And we are winning this, ladies and gentlemen. So stay optimistic, keep fighting, and maybe I'll see you tomorrow night, 6 p.m. at Parliament House. Will I see you there? I hope I do. God bless you all. I'll see you soon.